Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2019 Advanced. We're now going to turn our attention to some more advanced aspects of financial functions, and many of the functions that come into the category of advanced are ones that are used more in a professional context than they are personally. Having said that, many of them can be used for personal finance, and the first case that we're going to look at relates again to loans, but in this case I'm going to do something that business often needs to do, and that is to split the payments on a loan between principal repayments and the interest repayments to understand what part of a loan falls into each category. Now, I've set up a very straightforward example here. The table of values is in B2 to C6. So I have a rate, a number of periods, the amount of the loan, FV or future value is 0, and the monthly payment calculated using the PMT function is $1,109.53. And what I want to do is determine how much of that payment is principal and how much of it is interest. And I'm going to use two specific Excel functions to calculate those amounts. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, when you're paying off a loan, and this loan is being paid off over 180 months, each month the split of the payment between principal and interest varies. Generally speaking, the amount of the payment which goes to paying off the principal increases and the amount of interest decreases. So what we need to do now is put in a facility that will calculate the spread of the payment for each of these 180 monthly payments. So what I'm going to do in column E is to put in a period number. So we're going to put 1 and 2, and I'm going to use the fill option and select series. It's going to be by columns. It's going to be linear. The step value is going to be 1 and the stop value is going to be 180. And there we go. I now have my 180 periods listed out. The next step is to put in a column that shows the principal payment. Now, there is a specific function in Excel that calculates the principal payment in a monthly payment on a loan, and it's called the PPMT function. So what I'm going to do here is type in equals PPMT. And the first argument is the rate per period. So remember, it's monthly payments. So we want the annual rate divided by 12. The period number is actually E2. The number of periods is C3. The principal value is in C4. And the future value is currently at 0, but it's in C5. And click OK. So that means that in the first period, the principal payment is $609.53. So next, I'm going to calculate the interest payment. And the function I use here is IPMT. And this one has the same argument. So we're going to say rate divided by 12. PER is E2. NPER is C3. Present value C4. And future value C5. And you can see that my first interest payment is $500 for the first month. And of course, if you add the principal and the interest together, you get the payment that you can see in cell C8. Now, the next step I did is a deliberate error earlier on, and we really don't need to do deliberate errors for this type of thing now, because as you'll already realize, although I'm going to fill down all of these values, some of those arguments need to be made into absolute. So let's just bring up the function arguments again and check which ones. C2, for example, is always going to be C2, but as the use of this formula goes from F2 downwards, C2 isn't going to vary. Now, the only thing that will tend to vary as I drag down is the row number. So technically, all I really need to do is to make the row numbers absolute. So let's go through. And for NPER, present value, and future value, we're fine to leave E2 as it is. And click OK. Let's do the same for our IPMT function that we have in G2. And now I'm just going to fill both of those down. And you'll notice in the very last payment at the bottom, the interest payment is only $3.69, whereas the principal payment is $1,105.85. Now, just as an interesting exercise, having selected those two columns, what about an auto sum? Now, hopefully you won't be too surprised to learn that the total amount of principal paid, the last figure in F182, is $150,000. But you can also see exactly how much interest has been paid over the entire period. Now, make sure to familiarize yourself with the list of financial functions. Many of them are very specialized, but there are some which you're going to be able to use in many different situations. And one of the popular uses of these functions is in looking at depreciation of assets. So in the next section, I'm going to demonstrate a very simple depreciation function. And then I'm going to set you exercise 3, which is also about depreciation, but things do get a little bit more complex. But that's it for this section. I'll see you in the next one.